We are about to take the fuck truck to Pound Town for another rousing edition of the Disinformed podcast. I am Shane.
I am John.
And I'm Michael.
Are you prepared for that trip down memory lane, John? Because it's coming.
If I must.
As are we.
But also, congratulations, Shane, on introing when we should intro.
Yes, I
when
tried.
the goddamn show starts.
I made a real point of trying to get ahead of the game this week since I feel like I'm over-prepared and under-prepared all at once.
My favorite still was our Departed episode. Where,
Yes.
where it was just like hour 35 minutes, like,
Oh, yeah, huh.
roll title.
Here's opening
Intro.
credits. So I discovered today, whilst opening up the blessed social medias, that we can officially trace our origin story for Damn the Weather. And I got very excited to discover that this week, 6 years ago, was a day that will live on in infamy, and we will spare the details because I have no intention to slander any individuals on this podcast further than we already have. But I just wanted to share this with you, John, because in going back and looking over, I had to kind of like MacGyver our pictures together to get a good timeline for things, because it's been so long, and it was a real blitz up front. So, all right. In July 9th of 2014, I performed... Now, I should say, when did we release the Hollow EP? Do you remember? I think it was the same month. It would have been like early July 2014.
Probably. Funny that you bring all this up. I'll let you tell the story. Just remind me about CDs. Just say CDs at the end of the spiel. I'll let you know what I've been doing.
I will get around. Well, that CD had a major hand in the reason why, this all got started, as you'll recall. But long story short, too late. So July 9th of 2014, I played a show with the Skeleton Keys, which was my band at the time that Sam was in with me, at the Crescent Ballroom. All right? So that's July 9th. John was in attendance.
With my ex-girlfriend, yeah.
Yes.
That was a great set. It was
a fun night.
Very relaxed, ambient experience.
Yes.
Ooh, big word.
Now, to further give you an idea of what happened next, we had a band member quit the Skeleton Keys.
Yes.
Almost within 1 or 2 days after this. And we had slated a show where The Hollow, which was John and my project at the time, was going to do a co-headlined show at Sozo Coffee on July 18th. So it was going to be the Skeleton Keys and The Hollow as a duo show, and I was going to be playing the full set, which was going to be very interesting.
And it would have kicked off what would end up then being 6 years of you essentially doing that forever. So
yes, of just trying to pinball back and forth, and I was perfectly contented doing that because both were really fun projects. So the individual quit the Skeleton Keys right before that show. I think within 3 or 4 days of that show taking place.
Ouch.
So we had to somewhat scramble to get things back on track. And so essentially what happened is I said, listen, we'll do as much of the Skeleton Keys stuff as we can with just Sam and myself. And then, John and I will carry the rest of it. And I can do some solo stuff if need be. And Sam, if I'm recalling, said sort of like, well, I can, play some of your stuff with The Hollow. Like, I've heard your guys' CD. I can do 1 or 2 songs. So it's like, okay, well, let's get in a room together and play around. I'll let you pick up and carry where I'm missing in any of the linear narrative.
No, I was going to flesh it out. I think Sam's thing was that we did have the CD, so she could just access it or go on Bandcamp where we had it.
Right.
And just add some, I think...
I gave her a copy. I gave her a copy of the CD, and I gave the other individual a copy of the CD, and so all of this flushes out. And you don't have to be a super sleuth to figure this stuff out, which is why I said I'm not going to try to impugn anybody by getting into this. It's just an interesting story.
No.
What the fuck was that?
No, it's because I realized I said no. Very weird. But Sam essentially was like, hey, in a pinch, I can write some bullshit parts.
Yeah.
For the time being, and then we can flesh it out later. And
yes.
I remember we had 2 or 3 practices at your apartment. No? 1? I thought we had 2 or 3.
We had a writing session where we all got together and we worked on a couple things, and then we may have had like one subsequent practice to that.
Oh,
But it was not, because I have videos of that practice where we put the thing on the floor in front of us, where we were all sitting on my couch and like it's pointed at the ceiling fan. Like I have videos of us demoing stuff then. So that
color me intrigued.
So even better. So we go now from July 9th, where we have a show with this other band. I think July 14th, we had another show at one of our regular places, and then she's gone. July 18th, we do this show after 1 or 2 practices, which is ridiculous. And we kind of jokingly called it the Skeleton Hollow. We had, all 3 of us up on stage. Yeah. And so we just kind of went with it. And it was a one-off. It was not something we were intending to do going forward. It just so happened that Sam kind of dug John, and that was their first initial meeting, not in the way that his girlfriend would believe at the time. But, we just got the 2 of them in. And so I was thinking, like, wow, this is a weird genesis. And I was just focused on that and how quickly that came together. Here's the timeline that followed. July 25th was the first show that we played, credited as Damn the Weather, at Krabby Dawn's.
Yeah.
So we do the Krabby Dawn's set. August 26th, we have our first full band Damn the Weather practice, which includes Mike on bass and our other drummer, Zach. That was his first full band with us. And on that same day, we did a practice and we played a show. So we went and then played a 3-hour set, and we did like a full band set at O'Connor's.
Wow.
I didn't know that's how that went. I didn't remember that's how that went down. You're right. We did so much in like a congested amount of time.
Oh, dude, it gets worse. So to finish this up, August 30th, we do a Damn the Weather showcase again at the ASU Culture Clash, which was the downtown campus event that we were at. So less than 4 days later, we do another show. This is all trying to throw things together. We are working on material right now. So this is not like we've been together for months and we have this huge
you have
backlog
like an actual
of
set
stuff.
set up. You've practiced it plenty of times.
These were rough shows. Like thinking back on them, like I had fun in the moment, and I don't think back then I thought that they were rough, but then I put it through the filter of now, where Jesus Christ, I don't know how we were getting the gigs because we fucked through a lot, and it wasn't Shane. To Shane's credit, it wasn't Shane's fault at all. Like Shane, I would say throughout this entire time was the only like consummate professional, the only person who would remember all of his parts and sing all the right words and hit most of the right notes. Because we're human, we're gonna fail here and there, but especially Sam and myself, like we fucked up left and right. And Sam, well, they weren't technically like her songs, so she didn't have that emotional pull to be like, oh, I know what this feels like. Oh, sorry,
that's fair.
I know what this feels like.
Yeah.
But it's always embarrassing when you're the person who wrote the song and you're the one making it sound as far away from what it should be.
Well, I wasn't trying to, make us fuck the corpse before we put it in the grave. I just am saying, so yes, we were, really doing this on the fly. There was not a lot of like pre-planning to get into this. Now, August 30th is that show at the Culture Clash. September 3rd, we do a radio interview with the Blaze Radio for ASU at the time.
First time I'd ever done anything interviewee.
So we go do the radio thing. September 7th, we do our full band debut, Electric, at Sozo Coffee, which is the infamous Mustache Has an Attitude Problem night.
Yeah.
September 8th is our show at Crescent Ballroom, opening for a change of pace at their reunion show.
Jeez. So
throw this into perspective. We went from July 18th not even being a band to September 8th opening for one of the biggest local acts in Phoenix at the biggest local venue at the time, Crescent. It's barely over a month.
And what's funny that in the background throughout all of that, so you can just list the shows, but it was more of a job than our jobs throughout that time.
Of course.
Because
we were taking photos.
Yeah, we had a photo shoot. We went and recorded too.
Yep, we went and recorded Speechless at the time. Yeah,
because we had to have a single. We had management, so they were saying like, "Hey, like you're playing this big show. It's going to be your actual like debut show, like big show. So you have to have something that people can find you on. You have to have a streamable by that point.
That makes sense.
So that's how we got connected with the guy who recorded 7 of the 10 songs or 11 songs.
Yeah.
For our concept album. Like, we met him through that time when we didn't even know what we were. So the song that came out then is drastically different than what you can hear now. It's still on YouTube, so you can check that out.
And he really has been one of like the defining sort of sources of our sound as well. He's kind of, as much as the band has crafted the sound, he has kind of helped to influence how we approach songwriting, which is really great as well. So kudos to our good friend Dan, who's a marvelous man and who I have a sort of a, openly man crush on.
Likewise, he's a hot piece.
He's incredibly stunning as a gentleman. I just cuddle on up to that.
It was really hard to eat lunch with him because I'd be going to take a big bite of something, but my dick would just be so hard from looking at him.
I was going to say his bicep just muscled you out of the way.
That escalated a little bit quickly.
It normally tends to with us.
It's a reference, so if anyone gets it, it's all yours.
So I just
if anyone gets the reference, you got the reference. Haha.
All right. It was really interesting in looking back at sort of the significance of this month and the significance of the date, running into this odd confluence of events that brings all of us together. And we really threw this thing into motion ridiculously quickly.
Yeah. I have nothing else to add to it, but yeah.
So
Agreed.
The reason I also bring that up is because we are on the threshold here of another important anniversary ourselves, in that we are about to hit our 52nd episode soon, which will technically be, if we're going on counting it as release a week for a year, that would be our 1 year anniversary. Though technically our first episodes we released 6 at a time, and that was September 8th of
Something
last
like
year.
That. Yes, yeah.
I looked at it this morning. It was September.
Okay, then I agree 100%.
So we're coasting up. So we have to decide what we're going to do for an anniversary show, if we want to consider the number of the anniversary, or if we are going to go with the actual date. But I'm more inclined to the episode end.
I like the episode.
I think the number makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to do something exciting and you got to do something different for the anniversary. So I feel like we should orchestrate having a fourth person on the anniversary audio episode. We've done a guest now on YouTube, Sam. Thank you again. You're not going to hear this, but I think she gets like a 10 episode immunity from us, disparaging her character.
No, not even close.
Never.
But yeah, maybe we can brainstorm a fun. Maybe I have it. I think I have it. Let's see if we can orchestrate it. Maybe we can have Duan on our 1 year episode.
He is famous in and of himself.
So I saw him Thursday of last week. I got to see his new place. We social distanced. Yeah.
How can you do that while peeing into each other's mouths?
6 feet.
Surprisingly well. Yeah.
6 feet.
All right.
If you're closer, you wear a mask, but as long as it's further than 6 feet, right?
Listen, if you've ever been in Catholic school for a semester, you know how to do that. There we go. Hey, it's Shane. But while we were hanging out, he got a microphone delivered to him, a USB mic.
Oh.
So if we could coordinate, and actually, yeah, he's using GarageBand, and he's running it through a tablet. So he could zoom in with his phone and run the tablet and send the audio.
We don't need to start, laying the thing out for everybody to listen to.
But that's an idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's great.
The reason I also broached that as well, to keep cutting you off, because I can see
fine.
that you're just desperate to get your dick in here, and I'm not going to let it happen. The reason I stumbled across this is while I was looking back, I figured out where the birth of My Immortal was on this podcast.
Oh?
Episode 1.
No.
3.
Close. Episode 2.
Oh, LaVeyan Satan. It all comes back to LaVeyan Satanism.
We were talking about Satanism, and Michael claimed his only exposure to Satan was through this really horrible fanfic that he had read, My Immortal, and they were Satanists. And so he regaled us with the tale, and that laid the seeds for what would later become episode 25. So we have been talking about this show, that book, for the entirety of this podcast. That has been a thread throughout, like Uncle Touchy before it.
Yeah, you could argue that we talked about My Immortal more than Stephen King.
It's possible.
We've done an episode on My Immortal. I guess we've done one on Stephen King, but not really. So you're right. Yeah. Shoot. And the funny part, and not I mention this just as an aside, we will finish My Immortal in 2 more episodes. Not this one. So we will finish it.
Thank fuck.
On episode 52.
What a way to celebrate the anniversary by bringing this chapter to a close, like the Askewniverse just finally closing the book.
Yeah.
Oh,
It'll be the great end of season 1.
I am going to do something that I have never done once we finish My Immortal. I am going
Finish
to wait
yourself?
for the Yes. No, I'm going to wait for you to send me the supercut, and then I am going to get blacked out and not remember that I ever listened to it.
It's going to be like a 10-15 hour long listen, so it's going to be an all day like sport of
Last time I
drinking.
checked, there's 24 hours in a day I can stay blacked. If Sam could stay drunk for 6 years, I can be blacked out for a day.
If proof of nothing else that is true, Sam is most certainly the proof.
That's so funny that you, or not funny, it's awesome that you went back and kind of did the timetable on that. So now I actually can say, like, oh, here's how long I've been friends with Sam, because as Shane is well aware, like, friendship with Sam goes in dog years, you know? So I feel like I've known her, I feel like I've been forced to be her friend for like 40 years now.
Here's some context, and Sam and I have discussed this in multiple places, and I don't think she would be ashamed, but Sam had a really difficult time with the band she was in previously when she and I first started making music. So my initial sessions just hanging out with Sam were basically her getting free therapy from talking to me. Now, John, you have known Sam for quite some time. If Sam's got a bee in her bonnet, you are not going to be out of there quickly.
No.
So, and she was also having a lot of fun, like emotional, situations with loved ones and family and, significant other at the time. And there was a lot of nonsense occurring. I didn't get a word in edgewise for at least the first 2 months of knowing Sam. I essentially just sat there and nodded my head. So you can just envision how fun she was when she was worked into a rich foamy lather back then. And she will admit freely.
Oh, yeah. That would be the best compliment that you could give Sam, though, is that now, she is relative to that, like, very well put together.
Much calmer, certainly.
Yeah. She still can't, her and Michael share the trait that they really lose the plot when telling stories, but, they're passionate, and that's,
I appreciate that about
It's
her.
50% of the battle or something, right?
Oh,
Is that
man,
the phrase?
Can't believe it's been 6 years since January.
And how?
The CD deal. So you putting the timetable, I think you and I kind of are synchronized on nostalgia and when we participate in it. Maybe it's because, of the socials and getting...
Facebook does it.
But
Facebook is good at that.
I found 2 CD spindles. That's what the word is, right? Spindle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jesus. Filled with demos from going back to like first band practice of the first band that I was ever in, taken with a Tascam 2-track recorder.
Nice.
Jeez.
And it is some of the most painful things that you could ever do to yourself. So when I was putting together my turntable setup, I bought a 5-disc CD changer from Goodwill because it came with 2 bookshelf speakers. So other than that, I have nothing else that I can play CDRs on in this house right now until hopefully we get a desktop set up pretty soon.
Ooh.
From your parents?
No.
Oh, well, okay. I was going on your former joke that, once your laptop dies, you got to make your folks buy you a desktop.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, they're gonna foot the bill.
Okay, good.
But I have this like little embarrassing nostalgia nook downstairs right now where I'll plug in these same headphones and I have 5 discs in and I'll just go through them. Man, the adage of like, I'm going back and I'm wincing through a lot. But also, right now I was like severe writer's block, and Shane and I have talked about it, Michael, where it's like, there are things to write about, but it doesn't feel like an appropriate time to open your mouth.
That's
it's like,
fair. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, yes.
So I've been like, well, can I just go back into the past and start cherry picking stuff? Because You know, it's not like someone's going like, I want to know everything that John has ever done, and I am a historian on what he's done, and I'll be the, you know, I'll let everyone know that he is recycling old material. Like, no one fucking knows. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going through things right now. I'm like, it's, God, what is it? Out of like every 100 songs, there's at least one that has to be workable. So I'm going through doing that. I figured you'd find that kind of interesting.
Well, you know, I had a thought for the anniversary show, which I was joking with Michael about if he's having difficulty compressing some My Immortal scripts, is we have these interesting time tunnels back to, I have my interview that I conducted with you and the boys from the Hellfire Club. That is me as a journalist having an interview with you and the boys that we can read here, with you reading your responses and me reading the questions and Michael playing the character of the other boys in you know, that band.
We should just do that first episode post My Immortal.
I like that.
There's also an interview with the Skeleton Keys that was posted, and there is another interview that was done with you and I for what went on to be, I think they posted it at Yab Yum and for Amp Kicker. So when we were talking about the Hollow release, we were interviewed for that as well as a collective, which is entertaining in and of itself as well. So you can kind of watch our relationship flourish through these bizarre interviews where we're talking to one another.
Yeah.
So that would be fun. So that's an interesting touch tone as well to get us back to those times, and something we can play around with as a, you know, welcome back for all of us. And I don't know how we're going to incorporate Michael's meeting us, because I didn't meet Michael until the two of you met.
Well, the readers can pretty much just assume that I don't remember it because I was probably blacked out, because there have been plenty of times where we've talked about you guys having a show and me being drunk for it. So that's pretty much the extent of our meeting. So
you and Sam are kind of kindred in that regard, except she was playing the shows and you were watching.
Yeah, true.
Can I say one more music thing?
No,
and we can move on. I didn't ask what our topic was either, but
well, we haven't gotten there yet.
I know. Usually before we roll, I prepare myself a little bit. I'm like, hey, what are we going to talk about?
I almost did, but then I stopped. I was like, no, I like it to be a surprise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am one more artist throwing on the Phoebe Bridgers affectation away from strangling myself to death.
Really?
I don't get the reference.
Okay.
You're fired, by the way. Don't come back.
Do you know who Phoebe Bridgers is, Michael?
She was a character on Friends, right?
I love you so much. I will.
And I'm Michael.
She is the country goth queen. Let's put it that way, or alt country goth queen. She's queen.
I'm trying to compress those three definitions, those three genres.
Essentially, she's one
word.
of the biggest independent artists making alternative music at this current point. And she, as anything, when someone rises to that level of fame and adoration, artists are influenced and start writing material that, you know, is reflective of.
You follow the trend, basically.
That's a very nice way of saying that people copy her work.
And it's not even her style of writing, but lyrically, a lot of people have jumped on that same board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to articulate this without coming off as like a neckbeard. Because to preface it, I love Phoebe Bridgers. I love Better Oblivion Community Center, Boy Genius, Julian Baker.
Boy Genius is amazing. Yes.
Lucy Dacus, like this whole lane is amazing, and the songwriting is god tier. And no one, I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing against is originality dying with people trying to capitalize off of successful acts.
That's right.
You know, it's the way that it's been. This is almost a perpetual state. Music is sort of like the Ouroboros. It's a self-cannibalizing creature.
You're absolutely correct, because the last time I felt this way was the pop artists putting on what I called the Halsey affectation.
Yeah.
Where, like, you can hit, and the same can be said for Phoebe Bridgers in the same regard, but you could hit, like, a Halsey radio station on Pandora or Spotify, and within probably 15 minutes, you're like, oh, I haven't heard this Phoebe song, or I haven't heard this Halsey song, and you look down, and you're like, oh, shit. But I would say, like, a good example of someone, like, who's akin to but not riffing off of would be acts like, and I'm not just saying it because we got so close to being able to play with them, but like Great Grandpa, where the new Great Grandpa record, Four of Arrows, it fits in with the oeuvre of like Phoebe Bridgers and Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker, where being unique enough in the vocal timbre is, you can tell you're just singing how you would sing. And you can tell the difference between that and somebody who's, putting some flourish on to sound.
Who's jumping on the hoe train?
Yeah, someone who we used to be involved with on Instagram chats, on group, or the big chats on Damn that we've talked about.
Yes.
Who puts on that raspy voice, but I'm a girl, but it's a raspy, and I'm...
So this is John's Janis Joplin impression. We hope you enjoy it.
I'm sorry. I don't know what triggered it.
Actually, I don't either, but it's an interesting wormhole to go down.
You know what? Off air, I know exactly what triggered it, and I can tell you off air.
All right, I'm prepared for it. The funny thing, like, I always hesitate to toot our own horn, but it's something that you and I have talked about frequently, and it's not being self-congratulatory, just saying that we have heard it either parroted back to us so much, or we've said it enough that we've sort of managed to incept people with the concept, is we don't sound like anything. Whenever someone tries to come up with a correlative for us, they're like, oh, it's, we're schizophrenic. They don't have that immediate band. Like, every time someone compares us to a band, it's different. There's never been that where, like, the Sam's former group, every single bit of feedback I ever heard about them is someone was always jumping up and going, oh yeah, they sound like Paramore. Yeah, it sounds like Paramore. And it's just this kind of perpetuated state where we are we're so schizophrenic with what our own inspirations are, and we don't tend to write in this way that feels like we're just kind of churning things out of the conveyor. So I've never had anybody come up to us that gives us a similar comparison where it's like, oh, you sound like this. Never once has it been the same thing.
As a fan of your music, I agree. It is very difficult to explain to people what you sound like. The best thing that I usually go with is a lot of your music has almost an existential angst to it. And when I use angst, I don't talk about teenage angst. I talk about like an adult version of angst, which is almost paradoxical.
Porn.
Kind of, yes. But like, when people ask me how you sound, that's when I kind of just shrug and say, well, and I list your instrumentation, and I'm like, and they do a bunch of different things with it. So it is very hard. Yeah. So it is very difficult to explain to people. Like, I can give an idea of the overall, like, quality, quality. I say you guys are good because you are, but the content, yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
But I say the content is that sort of vibe, but the musical genre, I can't put a finger on it.
And the reason that I take that as a compliment is because we haven't changed our voicing the entire time. Like from day one, 6 years ago till now, we have approached, I was going to say something that makes it sound like we haven't grown as songwriters or musicians, which isn't the case, but without taking away from it, like, we haven't drastically departed from the mission statement, and we haven't gone out of our way to sound like something we're not. And I think that's what I was trying to say is, if you're an artist and you start out with a particular timbre to your voice, like let's say it's Paramore, you don't magically go from sounding vocal timbre to Hayley Williams to then sounding like Phoebe Bridgers within 3 records. Like, that is a conscious decision to emulate, and that's what bothers me.
Here's the thing. I think what you're trying to drive at is our inspirations are fuel for our machine, and it somewhat just sort of pushes us forward as far as what the soundscape that we hit is, and that's instrumentation or other things. But we're still essentially us to our core, as opposed to us just sort of like following the trend and jumping on the bandwagon and riding it until the next one comes up. Because you could see, like, when the White Stripes came out, they're immediately churned out 40 to 50 other bands that all had like 2 members. And tried to sound really gritty and not really well produced and just sort of thrown together. So it was all energy and enthusiasm as opposed to being this cultured and cultivated sound. Like, you can watch these touchstones occur. Anyway, we digress as per usual.
I think we can call the first 30 minutes of this episode Shane and John jack each other off into each other's eager mouth while Michael watches.
Isn't that every episode that we've done, honestly?
Yes.
You were mentioning like core. Have you guys heard of cottagecore?
No.
Yes, it's a type of aesthetic.
Yeah, so someone finally...
I think I butchered that word.
No, you got it right.
Oh, cool.
I haven't had to drink anything yet because of you today.
Ah.
Cottagecore, and I'll show a picture to you guys, and Shane, I'm sure will be able to like articulate and describe it well.
Oh, no.
But cottagecore looks something like just a blank screen.
A bright screen.
You see like that kind of like patterny dress.
It's like you gotta kill the light a little bit.
Here,
yeah,
hold on.
bruh. Like,
hold on.
We aren't that technologically advanced. You can't shove your phone through the TV
I was
screen.
watching a podcast on my phone earlier.
I was watching porn earlier.
But like stuff like that, people wanting to look that way.
Like
but
cottage.
That looks like a park. Oh, okay.
But like that kind of dress.
All right, I see what you mean. It's sort of like a flowery kind of sundress or things with spots or
like older timey rustic, very rustic.
If that would have been defined back then, the catsuit story of mine, that woman.
All right,
cottagecore was her aesthetic.
All right,
when she wasn't wearing a catsuit and having a butt plug in her.
That's such a 180. Because I'm now picturing her like Little House on the Prairie, and then like she takes off her like top layer of clothing, and then it's a fucking catsuit.
Michael, she was adorable.
Like schizophrenia doesn't walk around with a sign saying, "Hey, I'm crazy." You don't wear a Rorschach mask out into public and just watch everybody.
Fair point.
Yeah, James McAvoy in Split has a wardrobe that he has to change between, and the voices change as he changes the clothing. So. Michael, Split is a movie by M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, I quit. Well, for those of you who are uninitiated to how this show typically works when we're done with our self-congratulatory masturbatory sessions, we typically will dive into a random esoteric topic, and then we will discuss it. And in the course of explaining it to its core, to all of you eager listeners, we will lie a little bit about it. So the presenter will tell the co-hosts a few falsehoods, a couple untruths, and it is their job to be like good old bloodhounds and sniff those lies out and scream at them. And no, I wasn't making a joke at your expense, John.
Yeah.
Posse.
Indeed. And so that is what we do here. And so this week's glorious episode is going to feature a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. And I say that in that this is a story that originates and emanates from our very own home state, which is topical, considering the amount of just untold nonsense that is occurring within the cozy confines of this state presently.
Stop, I can only get so erect.
John, it's funny. I hear you speaking out of someone else's mouth. It's like, it's Beetlejuice. Learn to throw your voice. Fool your friends. Fun at parties.
So who's the presenter? Is it you presenting today?
It's me.
Shane?
Yes, it is I.
Yes.
Your humble narrator for, again, another cozy episode. And I wanted to start on this because very likely I hope that you have encountered a little bit of this at some point. The reason that this occurred to me is that John and I were, we're going to talk about a woman in a catsuit again. John and I were talking about the Blessed Joe Rogan podcast whilst I was over at Bottle Shop on Saturday. And the reason that I got into Joe Rogan's show in the first place, or I started listening, I'm not an uber fan. I just find him entertaining. But I knew him from UFC. I had enjoyed some of his stuff. But when Dan Aykroyd went on to talk about his, vodka line, I got really excited because I love Aykroyd. I find him really engaging, so I listened to the show. And Aykroyd is very entertaining and very engaging, but he's also a certified nut by the time you get to the end of that show.
Yeah.
He just rattles off strings of events, just encyclopedic knowledge.
It is uncanny. I don't think I've ever listened to somebody talk who had those polls to the point where, Shane, I watched the entire episode.
I figured.
And I will say to your credit that if I cherry pick the episodes that I watch, I could see it being enjoyable.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be a weekly endeavor for me, like you're saying.
Can't be. No.
because I feel like I had it on downstairs when I got home from work one night because it took me a couple days to parse through.
Yeah.
And Becky was like, I hate it. I was like, what about it? Are you hating so far? She goes, it just seems like they're just jacking each other off.
That's why she doesn't listen to our podcast, I've discovered.
Very much so.
Fair.
It was basically, they're on a tangent, like dead center in the episode about people needing to love themselves. And it was a very, like, it sounded like they were taking it from self-help books, like things that they had just heard but maybe don't believe, but they felt like since the cameras were on, they needed to make sure that they said it out loud. But yeah, he is a nut job, but he is an interesting nut job.
He's a very charming, eccentric man.
Can I take a stab at what I think you're going to present?
Please.
The Phoenix Lights?
No. You were close, but no cigarillo. We are going to discuss the Travis Walton UFO incident. For those who are uninitiated, and Michael's dead stare is going to tell me, so I can get into this by saying this stems from something that's very near and dear to my heart, and this film scared the bejesus out of me when I was a child. The movie is Fire in the Sky. If you have not seen, which I know Michael has not seen, but John may have encountered.
That sounds familiar.
Was that based on a book?
It was based on a book, the Walton UFO Experience.
Okay, I've been recommended that book more times than I can count.
Okay, so I grew up in a little town that doesn't bear discussing, but it is about 45 minutes away from where this took place. The gentleman, Travis Walton, is from Snowflake, Arizona, which is right in the same neighborhood of where I grew up in the White Mountains, which is terrifying. Also, the dates of this sort of fall into some family anecdotal joke here, but my sister, when they were bringing her home from the hospital, my mom claimed that there was some sort of a light that followed them intelligently for probably 20 minutes, and they weren't able to tell what it was. Now, my folks are not UFO freaks, and they're not those that would, sort of put this into your brain of going like, well, we believe that something followed us. Could have been a helicopter. There's any number of things. But they would tell this story. So my sister, when I was probably like maybe 9 or 10, elected brilliantly, as she and her high school boyfriend, who later became her husband, to take me to see this movie that is based on these events. And I remember these stories of this light following my folks home, and then they say, oh, it took place in Snowflake, Arizona, which is a place I'm very familiar with. And as I watched the events unfold on this screen, I was terrified to the point of I hid behind the seats in the movie theater screaming until my sister took me out of the theater. And we'll get into why it terrified me when we get into some of the events later on. So that's just a little preamble to get you into why I decided to choose this topic, because it's one of the things that Aykroyd says he believes, and it strains credulity a little bit here. And so I want to just dive right in.
Fair.
The Travis Walton UFO incident is an alleged alien abduction of an American forestry worker, Travis Walton, by a UFO on November 5th, 1975. While he was working in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. Walton reappeared after a 5-day search. The Walton case received mainstream publicity and remains one of the best-known alien abduction stories. It is worth noting that many skeptics consider the story a hoax, which is with almost every UFO abduction story, there's a plethora of people who are going to tell you it's a hoax. Walton wrote a book about his purported abduction in 1978 called The Walton Experience, which was adapted into the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. So I was 12 at the time it came out, now that I'm seeing the dates. So I will also tell you up front that I have got, I believe, 3 lies.
Okay.
So, diving in. The abduction claims. According to Walton, on November 5th, 1975, he was working with a timber stand improvement crew in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest near Snowflake. While riding in a truck with 6 of his co-workers, they encountered a saucer-shaped object hovering over the ground approximately 110 feet away, making a high-pitched buzz. Walton claims that after he left the truck and approached the object, a beam of light suddenly appeared from the craft and knocked him unconscious. The other 6 men were so frightened that they purportedly drove away and left him there. which is very reassuring for all of your, hey,
Right.
ride or die homies. If I get picked up by a UFO, are you going to stick around, or are you just going to let me get pulled up into the mothership?
The thing too is I don't know when like UFO, like not like fandom, like I don't know when that really was in its heyday. Like kind
I
of
will get into that.
Okay, because you know like Manic Panic in the '80s with Satan shit, but like I don't know the same factoid for UFOs. So.
I will touch on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I have a little information about that too, but that's more hearsay. So continue.
So, as the story continues, Walton awakens inside of a slimy cocoon. Breaking out of its membrane, he finds himself in a zero-gravity environment inside a cylindrical enclosure whose walls contain other similar cocoons. He's horrified to inadvertently discover that one contains the decomposing remains of a human body.
Hot.
As he makes his way to a neighboring area featuring what appear to be several humanoid spacesuits, he is apprehended by two extraterrestrial creatures. Easy for me to say. He was unwillingly hauled down corridors full of terrestrial detritus, such as shoes and keys, etc., before arriving in a bizarre examination room. This is the point in the film where I lose my shit. Now, I should tell you, I had my tonsils out at age 2. I had a lot of ear problems. Like, I had drainage issues with my ears, so I had tubes in my ears for years. Subsequently, John, prepare to laugh. I'm very gaggy as a result of this, which is why I can throw up at will, is I've figured out how the mechanism works from being very sick as a kid and all of these things. So, I will get to what triggered me while we were watching this.
Oh,
so,
fun.
The aliens strip him of his clothes and cover him with an elastic material that pins him painfully to a raised platform under an array of equipment and lights in the middle of the room. Now, what they leave out here is that in the movie they slap what looks like a handful of Vaseline into his mouth. So he's screaming, trying to get him to release him. They just slap this goo in his mouth and throw a sheet over him, which lays down and adheres to his face so he can't breathe. So now I'm thinking of these things, and it's making me retch. So I'm on the floor like a 12-year-old kid, like, vomiting as all of this stuff is transpiring on the screen.
I feel like this is therapy for you, just to talk about it.
Well, it's the reason I bring it up. And it's also, it terrified me for years, because, again, this happened down the road from where I lived. I know where these places were that they were showing this stuff being filmed. So it made me terrified of UFOs and alien abduction for a good long while in my very overactive imagination as a youth. So this is kind of why I bring some of this odd stuff into our mix here as we go on, as I am the paranormal guy, because this stuff just kind of fascinated me. When you're terrified of something, you want to confront it, meet it head on. And so that's why, you know, I was terrified of Pennywise in the It movie. Yeah. So, all right. Despite Walton's terrified screams, which, as I said, were muffled in there, the aliens pitilessly subject him to a traumatic, excruciating experiment. Oh, here we go. In which a gelatinous substance is shoved into his mouth. His jaw is then clamped open, and a device is inserted into his neck, and he is forced to endure an ocular probe while fully conscious during the experience. So
they shove something into his fucking eye.
They shove something in. It's a little whirling dervish kind of thing that starts moving towards his eyeball on screen, and that's when I lost my mind.
Well, I would meet you right there, because that is one of my, like, horror movie or suspense or anything. Like, as soon as the eyes start getting fucked with, like, I think, like, the smallest example that's not even a horror movie is, like, John Woo's Mission Impossible 2.
Yes.
Where there's the fight sequence near the end, and they have that awesome shot of the knife blade being, like, a centimeter from Tom Cruise's eyeball.
Yes.
That freaked me the fuck out. Like, I was like, "Ugh."
Now, how do you deal with Kill Bill during the, the eye snatch scenes?
I got over it because I like it. Like, I like the movie overall.
I think those are so funny that it's almost impossible for you to take it seriously, particularly the Daryl Hannah one, because both of them are Daryl Hannah. No, there's some that happened in the Crazy 88 sequences, but yes, the Daryl Hannah one, she sells it. The screams are just so hilarious that you can't really get, creeped out by it.
I feel like that's the big difference. It's the delivery. It's like Kill Bill. The difference between that is, like, it's so over the top and it's stylized.
Yes.
Like, it's an homage to that particular style of cinema. So anyway, and look at me, cinema, film. I'm a
I
critique
know.
now.
What do you know?
I
Michael,
mean, isn't that like every episode where we do, where one of you guys brings up one movie and I sit here and you both like gush about it?
I'm Michael.
It's a living.
You know, I would say that you would sit slack-jawed and drooling, but as someone who had to... funnily enough, I forgot to mention this. I got to take my COVID test this morning.
Oh, how'd you do?
Man, so you can't drink anything or have any, like, you can't have ingested anything for a half an hour before you go in. I dare you to sit in a room without having consumed any fluids for a half an hour and try to produce spit that is not bubbly.
Well, hold on.
Horrible.
Let's make this a parenthetical conversation before we
Got it.
dive back into Walton and the gelatinous goop.
Yes.
So you did a different test? You didn't do the nasal?
We'll talk about it. The test, yes, is saliva.
It's a saliva based. It's not the nose.
Which is great, and they're actually going to start disseminating it to the public as well. So you'll see this popping up that they're now giving it to other people. For those that haven't been able to figure this out, I know, Michael, we've been trying to kind of cloy this, so we might, bump this for time to time or just beep somewhere. But, lest we have to start including the disclaimer, John, that our views are not the views of this and it's subsequent nonsense. So, anyway. But yes, you have to sit, and they give you a little vial and a drinking straw that is wrapped up, and you have to sit and spit into the drinking straw to try to get at least this much fluid in there. And
So
you can't have any bubbles.
That's about a table. I would guess about a tablespoon's worth of spit. It's a substantial amount of spit.
Yes, it took
While
me
being
probably
dry.
Correct. So it took me about 40 minutes to get, the subsequent amount. Because I went up the first time and the guy's like, this is all froth, man. There's no saliva here. You've got to, get this. And he showed me again another chart and explained, you have to lull your tongue around in your mouth. You want drool, basically. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, good. I get to be Rick now and just...
Did you apologize to the gentleman and say that you swear this never happens? And that
No,
this is the first time?
I asked if he wanted to help me with giving me something I could suck on, and he elected to pass.
But he did tell you that in the next room over, there's a hole in the wall, and if you close your eyes, he would put a little tube through it, and you could just suck out the liquid from the tube.
It's the only time in my life where I just started soliciting men around the corner, like, hey, does anyone want to help gag me for a second?
Quick,
so
make me come.
I made that joke with Melissa. I was like, man, I could have filled that vial up 10 times if they'd let me jack off for the same amount of time, but no, I had to spit.
You know what? I just think that personally it's embarrassing that in this ridiculous state and ridiculous country that they can't just test for COVID and our cum.
I mean...
And that's my campaign platform right there.
That would be the fun way to test.
What are you running alongside Kanye West and all that?
I'm in the birthday party now, bitch.
Oh shit! So you're running in the birthday primary against Kanye West.
Are you all
I'll vote for
ready?
you.
Are you ready for the Sigourney segue?
Yeah, let's end
Oh shit!
end the
He's
parenthetical.
involved in here somehow.
Back on bodily fluids. We're gonna get back to Travis Walton being traumatized.
Nice.
So after enduring the ocular probe, he fully loses consciousness, and then he is found back on Earth, disoriented, abused, and sitting in a truck station bathroom. And the shot in the movie, which I remember, which is what officially is where we left, because that's when I started screaming to the point that my sister really had to remove me. He looks up, and on the window behind the toilet he's sitting on is a handprint of an alien hand on the window. Because,
Tight.
of course, naturally, they just want to menace you after having violently probed your body of we're coming back. So I lost it. They had to remove me from the theater, and my sister went home and told my mom she owed her money for that. They had to remove me?
Yeah.
No, they had to. They had to take me out of the theater. It was terrifying.
Worth a shot.
All right.
Yeah, fair.
So that is the conclusion of, the film basically goes through him, later on trying to figure out what happened and trying to get people to believe him. But that is essentially his claim of what occurred when he was abducted.
Now, so is the movie is that a big meat of the movie is the abduction, or is it more of a drama of him trying to get people to believe him, and that's 60 of the hour and a half.
It plays back and forth. They actually intercut him trying to tell people what happened with the story of what happened as he's sort of remembering it, because it's not just lucid. He doesn't just wake up and instantaneously recall.
Yeah.
So it's actually a really well done film. Having watched it in my adult life, I would recommend checking it out, because
I was going to ask. Okay.
It's critically acclaimed. Let's say that. It's a 90s film, and an early 90s film basically makes it a late 80s film. So it's not as clean as you'd expect.
Yeah.
No, but it's fun. It's worth checking out if you want to just get an idea of what happened here. So for UFO, the UFOologists or the ufologists. In the days following Walton's UFO claim, the National Enquirer, the source of all credible news in the United States, awarded Walton and his co-workers a $5,000 prize for the best UFO case of the year, after they allegedly passed polygraph tests administered by the Enquirer and the Aerial Phenomena Research Association, or ARPO, or organization, sorry. Walton and his older brother and his mother were described by the Navajo County Arizona Sheriff as longtime studnets of the UFOs.
Excuse me. Is the National let's not forget that. But is the National Enquirer paying them? That's real?
Yes,
the UFO
that is real.
Of the year?
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
Now, studnets, I'm going, is it was an obvious typo in the newspaper that I looked at here.
Okay.
There were students of the UFOs.
Oh, nice.
I like it. No,
here's
flavor text.
Here's
a
fun pull quote for you, gentlemen. I will do complete with our accent here. Navajo County Under Sheriff Ken Copeland went on to remark that Walton's story in particular, about his story in particular, there are too many things to indicate to me that it was a put-up deal. I don't know how it was brought off, but I just can't buy the story. Seems to me that boy's been getting friendly with the weeds while wood cutting.
Right.
Getting friendly with the weeds.
Bless
I like
him.
that.
It's great.
I want to keep that in our lexicon. Done? No, how many weeds have you been friendly with?
Indeed.
While you're weed cutting.
How you been cuddling up with the weeds up there in Arizona? So
I just picture some guy on like a twin bed, and he's got like a couple of bushes just like on the bed with him, and he's like spooning them. He's like, "Shh, hey, I'm here. Leave me alone."
Fuckus ficus. Come on. Oh, that's the way to get the real poison ivy right there. It's just loving the weeds in Arizona. Anywho,
is that quote real?
Is the quote real?
Yeah.
Is the quote real?
Is it bullshit? Is it a bullshit quote?
Half of the boy getting friendly with the weeds is a Shane thing.
Ooh!
Well done.
Ooh,
you picked one in the wild. Well done. It's almost too much me. I was worried throwing it in, but I was like, it's fun. Why not? We'll throw it in here.
I loved it regardless. I want to keep it as like a thing. Just get friendly with the weeds.
Indeed. Speaking of which, you've already missed one other, so you have one remaining lie coming up. So
that's fine.
All right. So the initial saying there are too many things that indicate it was a put-up deal. I know how it was brought up, but I just can't buy the story. That was the actual quote. I added on
Makes
the
sense.
other. So, all right. So some ufologists believe that Walton was abducted by aliens. UFOologist Jim Ledwith said for 5 days the authorities thought he'd been murdered by his co-workers, and then he was returned. All of the co-workers who were there, who saw the spacecraft, they all took polygraph tests, and they all passed, except for one, and that test was deemed inconclusive. So, that is the reception here. Now, here's the skeptical reception. The skeptics consider the case to be a hoax, describing it as a sensationalizing part of the media and a put-up job to make money. UFO researcher Philip J. Klass, he's a classy fella, he considered Walton's...
get out.
You're welcome. No. He considered Walton's story to be a hoax perpetuated for financial gain and discovered many discrepancies in the account of Walton and his co-workers.
Ooh.
After investigating the case, Klass reported the polygraph tests were poorly administered and that Walton used polygraph countermeasures, such as holding his breath, and that Klass uncovered an earlier failed test, which was administered by an examiner who concluded the case involved gross deception. Now, the polygraph stuff is going to be worth noting, so just keep that in the back of your minds for later on, because this is
I have issues with polygraphs.
It's going to rear its ugly head again. So, Science and skepticism writer Michael Shermer criticized Walton's claims, saying, "I think the polygraph is not a reliable determiner of truth. I think Travis Walton was not abducted by aliens. In both cases, the power of deception and self-deception is all we need to understand what really happened in 1975 and after."
Shermer sounds familiar. Is that what Aykroyd brought up on the
Yes,
on the Rogan?
Shermer is one of the people that they say is very critical. And so a lot of this is intertangled with the stuff that Aykroyd is kind of enthusiastic about. It's what made me think of it, was listening to the episode again,
And
because I went back.
That's also tangentially then related to, is that MUFON?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Henry Zabrowski of Last Podcast is
Okay.
hugely... I think he actually is a member. So,
All right.
Like he is
Well.
A member of
MUFON.
MUFON. Oh, wait, we're getting there. So, yes, as a matter of fact, yes, MUFON is coming up later on. So,
okay, cool. I'll ask then.
So, the cognitive psychologist Susan Clancy argues that alien abduction reports began only after stories of extraterrestrials appeared in film and on television, and this is to John's point from earlier, and that Walton was likely influenced by the NBC televised movie The UFO Incident, which aired 2 weeks before his own claimed abduction, and dramatized the alien abduction claims of Betty and Barney Hill.
So basically they're like, you just ate, you watched something on the TV, you ate some bad chili, and you had a fucked up dream.
Exactly. So your little fever dream after watching this and having a wet dream based on, and it's James Earl Jones stars as Barney Hill in this film.
Vader and Mufasa?
Exactly. I looked it up.
Bruh.
Go, why you Mufasa? So for the uninitiated, and this is again pointing back to the Aykroyd podcast that he had with Rogan, Betty and Barney Hill were an American couple who claimed that they were abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire in September, from September 19th to 20th of 1961. This is widely publicized, or the first widely publicized report of an alien abduction in the United States. It is kind of the progenitor of the movement. In particular, now, once they started making films that depicted the events, they had to go and see a therapist who had to induce them with hypnosis. Yes, so it's the incident came to be called the Hill Abduction and the Zeta Reticuli Incident because the couple stated under hypnosis they had been kidnapped by aliens who claimed to be from the Zeta Reticuli star system. And there's a whole lot of stuff. Aykroyd gets into this on that podcast. So if you're interested, as a little tandem podcast with us, go listen to the Aykroyd Joe Rogan. You'll get a lot of sort of backlog with this as well. But it is it's what Aykroyd claims to be the most credible UFO story because, of course, it's the original one, not influenced by pop culture or any previous stories.
Right,
Fair.
and for Shane, Shane has been trying to get me to listen to a Rogan, or Shane and I have a back and forth joke with each other that I like Tom Segura and Your Mom's House podcast. He's Joe Rogan. They're both very long podcasts that debut every week. I think Rogan's every day almost, right?
It seems like it.
He's at episode 1600 or something.
It's ridiculous.
crazy.
It's an
It is
astronomical
ridiculous.
number. Yeah.
But that being said, there are more memes on men that listen to Rogan than there are memes about people listening to Your Mom's House because, there's way more content. But as someone who came in thinking that it was not a joke, but I kind of avoid Rogan, I gave it a shot. I said it earlier. It's legitimately a good episode, and it opened me up to watch other interesting looking episodes in the future. So definitely worth it.
That's what led me down the rabbit hole of the David Fravor episode, and then got me onto the Bob Lazar episode, was the Aykroyd one, because they talked about his discussions with that. So this is what kind of pulled me into that topic. And again, as I'm illustrating here, this is something I find interesting. All right, so back in. Clancy noted the rise in alien abduction claims following the movie, and cites Class's conclusions that after reviewing the movie, any person with a little imagination could now become an instant celebrity, concluding that one of those instant celebrities was Travis Walton. So, interesting to point out, that they're looking at this now. Furthermore, psychologist Benjamin Simons, who was the hypnotist who worked with Betty and Barney Hill in the mid-60s, then stated during a presentation to the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, in 1987
okay.
that Walton's highly sexualized abduction tale is incongruous with a number of other accounts of the era, even though Barney Hill claimed that they penetrated him rectally with a device. So I find it kind of funny that we got off on this topic. He makes a lot
Don't
of
kink shame his abduction methods.
He makes a lot of valid points here, though. So it leads him to
Okay.
conclude that the story was either sensationalized to make the story more provocative, or that the story was, this is a great quote, a Freudian cry for help from an exceedingly depraved subconscious.
And that's not bullshit. That was a real quote.
Please
That is
tell
a
me
real
that's not
quote,
bullshit.
yes.
Okay, cool. That's beautiful.
I feel like at this point, my bullshit isn't even intuition. It's just wanting to actually believe that the things that you said are true. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where the sleeping with the weeds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Now, I will
goodness.
say the quote is, yes, that is a real thing that Benjamin Simons said in my head. So, congratulations, you snaked out another lie here, gentlemen. But allow me to continue, because this is a very deep paragraph, and I just want to make sure the
Yeah.
quote is what you're calling bullshit on.
Yeah.
All right, so Kelm went on to offer that the story has more in common with accounts of sleep paralysis than it does with more substantively corroborated abduction tales. Again, for the uninitiated, sleep paralysis is a period of inability to perform voluntary movements at either the onset of sleep or upon awakening. Episodes are often accompanied by a wide range of bizarre hallucinations, which comprise three categories: intruder hallucinations, which involve a sense of evil presence or a multi-sensory hallucinations of an intruder. Like you hear someone breaking into your house, you hear doors opening, things like that, upon having just woken up from a sleep state. There is an incubus hallucination, which is characterized by the feeling of pressure on your chest, suffocation, and physical pain, which also will lead to paralysis. And then vestibular motor VM hallucinations, which feature illusory movement and out-of-body experiences. So in the instances where you see yourself floating above yourself and things like that. All of these are based on, just to digress for a second, because I've studied a decent amount of this, individuals who wake up and claim, I felt like aliens were coming into my house because there was a really bright light and I felt like there were people around me and I couldn't move. Well, that's what sleep paralysis is. You will wake up from a dead sleep. Your body is basically still in a REM state, but you're conscious. So your body is paralyzed and it's not moving because it's technically asleep, but your brain is functioning. So there's a lot of these things that they will write off UFO phenomenon on because they have a lot of correlatives with dealing with sleep paralysis.
It's really interesting.
Interesting.
Funny, actually. Well, not really funny. I get sleep paralysis. I have sleep paralysis.
Oh, fun.
So I have the intruder aspect. There also is an overwhelming sense of doom that occurs with that.
That's just life these days, Michael.
Well, yes, that is true. Yes, but that would be the case for me. When I was younger, I would have a lot more of the intruder aspect, especially when I lived in my parents' home. I lived with a Palo Verde, pretty much a tree in Arizona. The street lamp would always shine shadows onto the window looking into my room. So I'd always see that, but I would wake up in the middle of the night, not be able to move. It was that feeling of not being able to do anything or act, and then I would feel like there would be an intruder coming in. Nowadays, I don't have that intruder aspect. I just have the overall feeling of doom and that I need to move, which is it's hard to explain because it's not something I want anyone to experience.
Right.
But in order to explain it, you'd need to.
It's a really heightened anxiety and sort of a sense of powerlessness, probably.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
I don't have it a lot, but I get it every now and again, and it's a very, very weird feeling. And it's kind of similar to what you're talking about, Michael. Mine, it feels like felt like someone was like talking, like a low, like it's almost like you're coming out of a dream, like in a nightmare, like you'd hear a deep rumbling voice. So it would be like that panic, like holy shit, so like what the fuck, and then you wake up and then you can't fucking move.
Right. So the other things I can touch on here to just sort of further illustrate is the intruder and the incubus hallucinations typically co-occur. and are accompanied by fear, whereas the VM hallucinations seem to be more positive and involve feelings of bliss. So
yeah, I had no idea. Sorry to interrupt again,
no.
because I usually do that, but I had no idea that the out-of-body experiences were also considered part of sleep paralysis. But it makes a lot of sense, considering that you don't really have any control of your body. So of course your brain would try and rectify that and be like, well, of course you're not in your body, you're out of your body. That's why you can't move it.
And it's this feeling of a spiritual separation from yourself. And yeah. So the sleep paralysis will also involve a full return to wakefulness during the REM-induced muscle atonia, where your body is still actively engaged in a sleep cycle, and your mind has returned to a wakeful state, which will typically account for the paralytic state often described by abductees. So that's the correlation we have here. So these are the criticisms that they throw at Walton.
Okay.
So anything else you want to touch on while we're there? Or
No.
Okay.
Good.
No, I said gave my 5 cents.
All right.
2 cents, whatever.
So here is media and publicity. In 1978, Walton wrote the book The Walton Experience, which details his claims and became the basis for the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. Walton has occasionally appeared at UFO conventions or on television. He sponsors his own UFO conference in Arizona called the Skyfire Summit. 30 years after the book's release, Walton appeared on a Fox show, or a Fox game show, in fact, called The Moment of Truth, and was asked if he was, in fact, abducted by a UFO on November 5th of 1975. The whole point of this show, if you're not familiar, because I was not either, is the Moment of Truth is that they would put people, connect them to a polygraph, and then make them answer questions. And so it was intended to sort of catch people who had cheated on their wives or their
like
husbands.
A Jerry Springer offshoot kind of thing.
Essentially. So that it's like they have you, the Maury Povich thing of like, are you the father of this child? And you've got an actual thing strapped on to tell whether you're telling the truth or not.
You're like, I'm going to try and lie. I'm going to try.
So, and you could win money if you were not lying. And so when he was asked if he had been abducted, he replied yes. The polygraph determined that he was lying.
Ooh.
Damn.
Now, there has been a lot of fun surrounding this because I read several articles. I'll include one of them in the show notes here just so you can go and read it on your own if you want to. But he actually claims he was coerced into going onto the show because he had just lost his job and he was desperate for money. He didn't want to do it. He had a bad feeling about it. And he believes that they had rigged the polygraph to make it seem like he was lying, to discredit him. So this is what he's claiming. So interesting state of circumstances, and that, ladies and germaphobes, is what I have to present to you this week about the Walton incident here in the grand state of Arizona.
So, do you personally, Shane, think that Walton is lying?
It's really, here's the thing. I don't give a lot of credence to the UFO stories and the phenomenon, typically, until I started going into these situations. The David Fravor podcast in particular gave me a very ooky feeling when I was listening to it. I listened to it with the lights off on Halloween, by the way. So as he's telling his story, it was probably, I think Melissa was at work, and I was just sitting in a bathtub listening to a podcast like a fella does of an evening, and we just hang out with the lights off and having this. And once I started pulling up the video podcast, because I wanted to watch along as they were showing the video footage, I started to get a little unnerved. And it is things like this that have some sort of a video component that corroborates that actually start making you feel a little unnerved about it.
So you sound 50-50.
I'm on the fence, but about Walton in particular, I have not seen any of him personally speaking about it to lend any credence one way or the other. It's kind of, you want to read it with your own bullshit detector, basically.
Yeah, he could be a Lazar to you.
Yes.
You know, like...
Yeah, and I mean, even then, like, the circumstances with the Lazar thing are bizarre for the podcast. Having watched if the film were done better, I probably would have enjoyed his story a bit more, but he's just so incoherent with the narrative of that documentary that made me hate him actively, because Jeremy is a glorious human being. Anywho, long story short, too bloody late. I'm not sure how I feel about Walton. It's unnerving just because there are all these anecdotal things that surround in my own life that kind of prejudice me into believing that something has to be happening here. The Phoenix Lights phenomenon is another one of those interesting set of circumstances that we can talk about at some point.
The weird thing for me, guys, is that UFOs are like a gray area for me where I'm not like... I'm the 50-50 on the topic itself, where it's like, it's kind of bullshit. But then you see like really cool things. But then, there's the skepticism inside of yourself. And they touch on that on the Aykroyd episode a lot. Whereas on Ghost and Paranormal, it's almost like 75% of me where I'm like, definitely. But not on, and we've talked about it, not the like religious end of it, but just the excess energy that's left behind. Like there has to be a leftover energy.
How could there be energy without consciousness? Michael says with his smirk. I can tell.
No, I mean, I don't need to.
We've gotten
first off, it's a belief. I'm not gonna shake anyone's belief because I don't care to. Because you can believe whatever you want. I won't try and shake you of
Listen,
it. That's why I don't yell.
I'm just a Satan-loving Satanist.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Because you say God-fearing Christian, but if you're a Satanist, you just love Satan. So Satan-loving Satanist.
Yeah.
The water remembers
and I think you should... Well, the water remembers all, and the water judges us for our crimes.
If birds aren't real, then how can we say that UFOs are real?
You son of a bitch, you got there before me. I had it. I was waiting for a pause.
You waited until he was drinking from his soda coffee
I was
thing.
so poised because I was going to be like, if we cannot believe that birds are real, I don't believe UFOs are real. And it's in my brain. So you and I, again, our wavelengths cross.
Before we get to the lies, and I'm sorry that I cut you off, Michael.
No.
I couldn't resist.
No, you're
the
fine.
birds, in the Bard house.
You son of a bitch.
You got to get it in. You got to get in every...
I got to ask Shane this question, and maybe I don't remember if I sent it to our group chat or if I just sent it to Shane specifically through Instagram, but it's a Birds Aren't Real advert from LA.
I think you sent it to all of us.
I
think it was in the... Oh, okay.
I don't think I've seen that. I would have remembered if I saw
it's
something
they
like
purchased billboard space in Los Angeles, and
really
some propaganda spouting.
That's good. I like that.
And that I guess I never explained where I got that from, and that's where I got it from, is the actual Birds Aren't Real organization. And it's a really great eye-opening thing that you should check out for yourself.
Goodness.
Wake up, sheeple!
Wake up! It's feeding time.
Sorry. Let's get into these lies, and we should, even the ones that we caught, we should just recap them.
Yes, I will give it to you. The reason being is that I gave you a gimme.
Okay.
So technically, you got partial credit on one, and then I'm giving you partial credit for Michael's. Because the quote was a fun just throwaway. I didn't actually technically include that in my 3. So
you were just riffing in the moment.
Yes, because I thought it would be funny because I'm trying to make this entertaining, so I threw that in as to keep the episode light. I'm giving you credit; it's a full credit, Michael. I'm crediting both of you with a lie.
I was about to be like, no, this is bullshit.
It's a little.
I need to speak to the manager.
You wouldn't know this unless you've seen the film and read. So this is one of them is kind of a cheap lie on me. So I gave you an out one way or the other. The whole depiction of what happened to him when he woke up is not true. So him awakening in the cocoon, going through all of that stuff, that specifically is kind of like a 2-part lie here.
So him waking up seeing the cocoons? That's
the bullshit? What his actual claim was...
What is it a reference to?
Hold on. So he actually claimed occurred is he woke in a hospital-like room and being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He claims that he fought with them until a human, wearing a helmet, led Walton into another room where he blacked out as 3 other humans put a clear plastic mask over his face. Walton then claimed he remembers nothing else until he found himself walking along a highway 5 days later with the flying saucer departing above him.
Okay.
So,
I like the lie better than the truth.
This leads into the second half of what the lie basically is. I'm calling this whole thing as a single lie amongst itself. You could call it 2, basically. But I omitted something. So later on, when they talk about his book as a basis for the movie, all of that story is what they claim happened to him in the film. So Paramount Pictures, when they pitched the book, essentially said his account was too fuzzy and too similar to other televised close encounters, and so they enlisted screenwriter Tracy Torme to write a flashier, more provocative abduction story for the movie.
motherfucker.
Oh my god. It is this is based on a true account.
There you are.
And they just say that the name is the same.
Yes.
Or he was abducted. That's the one thing that we took from
It's
this.
11.
So that I'm
Oh,
considering
boy.
a lie, technically.
That's fair.
But
I
it
accept.
basically was a 2-part lie because I left it off at the end. So you can game it one way or the other, but I still called it 3. The second, of course, is the quote is incorrect, which the quote was me adding on, "It seems to me the boy had been getting friendly with the weeds while wood cutting." That is my
Getting
quote.
friendly with the weed.
The other entire section about the psychologist Benjamin Simons, the hypnotist who worked with Betty and Barney Hill, is completely contrived. I made up that entire paragraph.
Okay.
So the quote is a fake quote, misattributed, because that entire section is just me bullshitting. So no one ever.
So we got part of the
So
lie.
technically, you smell the hint of the lie, and that's why I clarified the quote is what you're calling out. So yes, technically it's wrong, but that entire section is made up. So
And what were we covering in that section?
my including the gentleman Benjamin Simons giving a speech to MUFON in
Okay.
'87 never happened. He was not involved in this at all. He never tried to discredit Travis Walton. He doesn't even know who Travis Walton is. He may have been dead by the time Walton put his story out, for all I know, because he was helping the Hills in the early 60s. Around 64 to 65 is when he was actually working with them. So all of that stuff, meaning he was pointing to sleep paralysis as being the thing he actually was enduring, my discussing sleep paralysis, bringing all the other stuff in, saying it was a more sensationalized abduction tale, that it was incongruous because it was overly sexualized and an expression of, a depraved
Misdirect.
society. That whole paragraph is Shane.
You made Michael admit to his sleep paralysis, all for naught?
Well, it is something that is commonly they would discuss if you are, a student of the game as far as UFO abduction goes. A lot of psychiatrists and psychologists point to sleep paralysis as being the common thread and the reason for them believing that they've been abducted.
Yes. A lot of people, because I have read on this, a lot of people either, for the intruder aspect of the sleep paralysis, they either assume it's an actual, burglar or robber or something like that, or they can not assume that it's a person, like a human, and then start, making the connections that it could be something else,
And
something that is probing them.
The more that UFO culture has been built up, it injects the idea of aliens into your subconscious, and then you start to dream around that pearl, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole thing is second, basically what I considered my second lie.
Okay.
I have to give you credit because you took an account that seems on its own pretty pedestrian
And bland.
And yes, I woke up and there were 3 bald men and a dude with a helmet that were operating
And
on
they put
me.
him. It wasn't even operating. They put a mask
Oh, yeah,
over
yeah.
his face, and then he woke up.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for the story, bro.
Mhm.
Sounds like you had a fun night on shrooms or something. Not like getting abducted by, little green men or, giant gray aliens or something like that.
I heard 3 more interesting stories than this when I was waiting to send off our Damn the Weather packages at the post office today.
I bet.
I'm not kidding.
I really bet.
Yeah. So long story short, too late. Those are essentially what I would consider to be the 3 lies if we're going to incorporate the
Okay.
quote as well. But that's the one's a
Cool.
2-parter. So technically, I'm giving you half credit on pulling out the quote there, John, because it does sound very Shane-ish.
Yeah.
So it does kind of go in keeping with that. So you caught the scent of it, but not the whole breadth and depth of the lie.
All right.
All right. So that is it for that section. So thank you. Always fun.
Yeah. That was great. I will, after we're done, send me a reminder of the episode that you're talking about. Whatever's, sorry. The one that spooked you in the tub.
Oh, the David Fravor one.
That was-
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I will send it along.
Yeah. Just remind me. I'll throw that on at work on Saturday or something.
Okay. Yeah, it's worth having on with the video component because you get to actually see what he was referring to.
Yeah,
and
I'll throw it up on one of the TVs that we're not using, and I'll force any random retail customers to listen to it.
You will get the joy of meeting our good, close personal friend Jeremy Corbell.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna have a 43% John here in next episode.
Here's hoping.
That would require feelings.
Can I also point out,
That's
I
fair.
was talking about this with Melissa the other day, and I was relishing the number of changes that we have gone through in our group chat to the title of our group chat. I think if the listeners who are following the show will appreciate. So we started out for a long time as like
Podcast.
just the Disinformed or podcast.
Yeah, it started off just podcast. Yeah.
And then
with like an exclamation point or something.
We have now morphed within the last couple months to be the Jeremy Corbell podcast, the Uncle Touchy podcast, and now we are officially titled the Birds Aren't Real podcast.
Yeah, and what's my favorite part, more because what they say is that a picture is worth 1,000 words, is the icon. Like, we troll each other and change the picture nonstop, but mainly it's at my expense for the most part because of all the times my Zoom meetings freeze, or my Zoom freezes on the meetings, and Michael will take a picture of it, and then by the end of the episode, that's our new icon, is me looking like a moron. And I got Mike last week, but then also I've been rewatching the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies again, and I was watching the infamously terrible, and this will segue into the next segment of our show. I was watching the infamously terrible third installment, and just happened to find just amazing pictures. I showed Shane in person on Saturday kind of the things that I found, but the image that is now our group chat photo is emo Tobey Maguire, but zoomed into a ridiculous degree, making like a pouty face. But I kind of live tweeted watching Spider-Man 3 to, my tens of followers, and I found most likely the best things that happen in life. It was just totally organic. I'm watching the movie, and let's see where it is.
Here we go.
I'm watching the movie, and I pause it because I have to get up to pee. And it's the scene where Peter Parker and Harry Osborn are in the mansion. It's after Harry Osborn has amnesia because he got into the accident, and they're looking at a portrait of Willem Dafoe's
Green Goblin.
Yeah, Green Goblin,
Yeah.
but him, whatever. And the framing of the picture, it's Tobey Maguire. There's a picture in the background that's not the portrait. It's like it's a sign, and the cinematographer either caught this and thought it was hilarious and left it in, or didn't catch it, and I don't know which is worse.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cut off from the whole statement, and what it reads is "Anal Street Broad." I shit you not. It says anal.
You're gonna have to somehow put this picture in the show notes.
We'll put it on our Instagram
listeners.
because we do need the traffic. So let's add that in.
I like
Here,
it.
while we're on the topic, we'll do this in live time. I screenshotted it, and boom, it's in the Birds Aren't Real podcast chat.
Do I really
Bless
have
you.
to? Okay. All
Can I
right.
just, for the listeners who didn't get to take the visual ride with us here on the glorious circuitous route that is that, have you ever watched your grandfather try to look up a website?
Oh shit, is that what I looked like?
That the finger pecking of doom of like every time John pulls his phone up to look at something, I'm like, oh Jesus, here we go. Grandpa
Like,
Simpson's
all right,
trying to find porn
60,
again.
60 years from now, we'll
Anal
get there.
treat broad.
Okay.
Anal treat broad.
Yes.
Love it.
I know
All
that.
right.
Hold on, new segment.
No, stop with your Twitter shit, John.
Yeah, we're done. You had the perfect
Listen,
segue.
I'm going to tell you, the Jurassic Park updates from last week went over like a fart in church, so I'm not engaged with this anymore.
The Velociraptors have figured out how to hold a gun. Boom, it's still a segment.
Fuck the Velociraptors. Fuck them in the ass.
Well,
You're done!
You're done.
no, what is
You're
it? Your
canceled.
from last week, it's not your done, it's your boosh, your bunst, or
Your
what was
bunk.
your bunk. There we go. Sorry.
Ya bunk.
Uh,
Oh yes.
hey
From the
guys,
silver dollars.
I'm fucking trying. Okay.
I appreciate that.
All right.
And it shows.
yeah.
I accept that.
Yeah, I accept that.
All right.
We're all just trying.
John,
All right.
please.
We're all just
Sigourney
trying.
segue us away.
Michael,
Yes.
are you a voice actor?
No.
I'm not a voice actor. Shane, have you worked as a voice actor?
As a matter of stern fact, I have actually been paid to use my throat before.
You sound just sexy
Ooh,
enough to make
saucy.
that work.
Indeed.
So for the last 1800 years, we have been doing little tag on to the end of every episode where we are making the unofficial audiobook that no one in their right mind has ever asked for the world's worst fan fiction titled My Immortal, written by Tara Gillespie, better known as her counterpart, Raven,
Ebony, Darkness, Dementia, Ravenway.
There we go. Thank you.
So sad I know that.
This also has kind of been a social experiment to see if we can't beat all of that good learning out of Shane's brain by making him read something just so ridiculously stupid that maybe he likes slapstick comedies afterward.
I actually thought that you were trying to drive me insane and make me kill myself like some sort of eldritch horror here.
Speaking of people not being able to go on the video journey through this, there are moments where Shane looks like he is having, to quote a band that I am happy to say is dead, 0% fun.
Some things just refuse to die, John.
And how? And if you've gotten to 1 hour and 27 minutes into this, and you're that petty, you deserve to hear the reference.
Yes.
So, welcome to the podcast. Spite aside, we have a couple more weeks left of this, and then Michael is going to abandon his thesis to put a supercut together of the 15-hour audiobook.
Jesus Christ!
Thesis
Christ.
So when we're reading this, there's a couple important things to note, and I think I'm getting better at this pitch.
You are
every week.
Yeah.
So there's a couple important things to remember before we get into this segment. One, it's completely optional. You can stop listening if you want at this point.
Yeah, you can.
And no one's gonna blame you. Shane and myself, personally, we will definitely not blame you.
You have to keep listening. I actually will blame you. I'm gonna be very upset if you don't. Stop.
Okay.
Here.
Okay. Well, secondarily, we read everything exactly how it is written.
Phonetically.
And Michael has gone to painstaking lengths to take the original source material and then just, not to simplify it too much, but crudely put it into a script.
I mean, he has to transcribe it and then fight Google autocorrect in order to make these misspellings live on the page. So, credit to him. It's tedious beyond belief.
I broke Google. I broke it. It stopped recommending it, and I'm like, good. Stay down. Sit down.
His Google ads and his Instagram ads right now is basically hooked on phonics. They just really...
I think it's recommending a new podcast called Dyslexic Dicks to him on a weekly basis.
His Google is tapping out so hard. But anyhow, we/I/all of us figured that going forward, it kind of necessitated a little preface, because if you are new to the podcast or came in anywhere after the first time that we did it, it kind of just sounds like we decided to throw away the episode and just be nonsensical. But this is kind of a love note to a terrible thing that Michael brought to our attention. And as we talked about earlier, it's been referential since episode 2.
Yep.
So it's kind of something that we're going to finish out and just coincidentally finish out by our 1-year anniversary mark. So with no further ado, I think it's time that we fuck this pig.
We finally get to conclude our season 1 arc with the telling of this ghastly tale. And John, you actually sounded very much like me introducing the show on episode 2.
Yeah.
So congratulations, you're catching up.
Thank you.
We're actually getting used to this 1 year in. What do you know?
Ooh.
So that will lead us trippingly up to the doorstep to hell that is previously on My Immortal. Chapter 35 takes acid flashback to a whole new fucking level as Ebony discovers that Draco's doppelganger is in the conmen room. Jesus. Believing first that Draco had joined her in Tim travel, and then discovering it was Luscious Lucius, or Lucian, as she calls him. And as luck would have it, Lucius just so happens to be in a band with Snape, Sirius, and James Potter, and of course, Sweet Satan, aka Voldemort, the younger. Naturally, all of them are wearing good Kraloti t-shirts in the 1980s. So who's down for a little creative anachronism? You? Good, because it keeps coming. As luck would also have it, this hot goth youth group is missing a lead snigger. And as their previous vocalist committed suicide, as is the fashion for their kind. It seems like all talented vocalists kill themselves, which is why John and I are still living.
Oh, I dig it. Yeah.
As it turns out, their band X Black X Tier X is playing backup at the Marlon Mason show in Hogsmeade, lending credence to John's belief that Tara has never attended a fucking show in her life because bands do not play backup. Just so you know, kids, there are supporting acts, opening acts, etc. It's not someone batting cleanup in the rotation of a fucking baseball roster.
Yeah, it's also not Britney Spears held captive in Las Vegas for 6 years.
Yeah. Jesus. Also, for the record, for those playing the home game, James Potter is now called Samaro, after Samara in the fucking Ring franchise, and Ebony auditions for the band by performing Green Day's Boulevard of Borkin Drems about 20 years before its fucking inception. She wows the band, of course, with her dynamic lung capacity. And she is asked to join the group to perform that evening. No further practice required. So, congratulations for their professional capacity as well. This puts Ebony in a bit of a quandary, as she needs to get a sexa outfit to attend the show in, as well as a new outfit to perform with the band. What's a Mary Sue to do?
Oh my god.
Just as she is lamenting this terrible travesty, Morty McFly shows up and arrives to offer her to take a ride forward in time in his special machine to end the chapter. Fucking hell. So, we then have chapter 36, which sees Ebony explain her plight to all of her contemporaries back in the future. Professor Sinister Travolvery is still slamming truth juice like there's no tomorrow. A group cutting session is proposed to commemorate her good fortune. And then Draco proposes that they brew up a love potion to assist Ebony in her dat rap efforts. Someone simply must have a vial of liquid luck in their possession because this meeting also coincides with fucking potions class. And as Snap is in Azkaban for kid diddlin', we are reintroduced to new professor, Cornelio Fuck. Apparently the menstruation of magic has taken over Hogwarts in this story as well, and so Cornholio is now teaching the portions class, as they say. The kids begin to talk amongst themselves, causing Cornholio to have an outburst. They continue speaking, and he has another outburst and claims he's going to grab Rumbridge to assist in punishing them. Hairgrids is suddenly discovered attempting to slip Ebony an amnesia potion for no good reason. And we flash to chapter 37, wherein we slip into Draco's point of view as the spirit journey of these fucking chapters slides into the peyote stage. They bludgeon Hagrid to punish him for trying to slip her a Mickey. They decide to hold the amnesia potion themselves to help Ebony somehow more readily seduce Satan. And then go looking for Professor Sinister. They discover Tom Rids magically in the professor's office, who just apparated there to give Ebony some fucking clothes, because congratulations, this is how life works. They next discover a sign on the wall, as is in keeping with the Potterverse, to indicate that Professor Sinister has been sent to Azkaban for being too goth. This is a real thing.
Bitch. Yeah.
Goddamn. Or Quabdam. And she has been replaced by Dumbledore. So he arrives just in time to accost them for being in his orifice, and Ebony escapes by jumping back into Morty McFly's Tim Machine, which gives her a flash forward to Professor Slutborn's office in the daft past. She gets into an argument with Slutborn about who's, got rightful claim to being there, and then excuses herself by saying, "Oh, sorry, I just thought that was the classroom." And he tells her, "Oh, fine, you can go." She then walks out of the orifice and finds the band waiting for her. X Black X Tears X. And she asks them, of course, where Satan is, and she's told that he's coming.
Like, coming.
Coming, lols. And soon, Satan arrives. They leave the band behind to go to the concert, and that brings us to our current state in Chapter 38.
Wait, hold on. We need the intro as performed, all that other
Son
stuff.
of a whore.
And
I need to put in that music somewhere.
Action.
We bring back My Immortal, as performed by the Disinformed Podcast Cast. Chapter 38. Satan and I walked to his car. It was a black car with pentagrams all over it. On the license plate said 666, just lick Draco's car. I went in it, seductively. Stan started to drive it. We talked about Satanism. Lols, he was named after Satan. Cooting, music, and being gothic.
Oh my Stan. Gerard is so fucking hot. One.
Volksamort agreed as we smoked some weed. Parenthetical. Cars by grease are hot. They are so sensitive. I love them. Lol. Goes fucks a by guy.
Lol, I totally decided not to commit suicide when I heard Helena.
I said in a flirty voice.
Hey, Satan, do you know the cure for when people are addicted to Volsmart serum?
Well,
He thought.
I think you have to drink vampire blood.
Suddenly, Volksamort parked Dakar behind a Blake movie theater. Satan and I walked outside. We went into the movie tether, where they were showing the Exorcist. In it, a boy and a girl were doing it. Suddenly, a serial killer came. Lol. Satan and I laughed at the blood cause we're sadists. While Satan was watching da movie, I had an idea. I took Satan's Gothic Black Nightmare Before Christmas cigar sexily from his pocket and put some amnesia potion in it. I put it Blake in his Blake Emile the Strange bag. Satan turned around and started to smoke it. Blake clouds with red pentagrams in them started to fly around everywhere.
OMG! One.
Satan said, jumping up. I gasped cause I was afraid head noticed.
Anabi, guess what?
I knew that the amnesia had worked.
Amnesia potion has not been invented yet, so it will not work.
He said.
Too bad, because I wanted to use some on you.
Cool.
I raised my eye, suggestingly. And then he talked of my clothes sexily, and we started to make out. I talk of his shit. He had a six-pack. Just lick Gerard way. One. We Frenched.
Excuse me, but you are going to have to leave. One.
Shooted the lady behind us. She was a prep.
Fuku. 1-1.
I said. Suddenly, I attacked her, sucking all her blood.
No! One.
She screamed. All the preps in the theater screamed, but everyone else crapped, 'cause Satan and I looked so cute together. Satan and I started to walk outside.
ZOMG, how did you do that?
Voldemort asked in a turned-on voice.
I'm a vampire.
I said as we went into the car.
Seriously?
He gasped.
Yeah, seriously.
I said, drinking some beer. Satan started to drive the car. I smelled happily.
It's too bad we didn't get to see the rest of the movie, don't you think?
Yeah.
I said as we kized passively. Satan parked in a Blake driveway next to the place where Draco and I had watched GC for the first time. We went inside where Marilyn Mason was playing and started to mosh. Lol. And the people, now you've gone too far. Juice Crest Superstar! 111. Screamed Marlon on the stage. We did the devil fingers. I started to dance really close to Satan. He was so schmexy. 1. He looked at me all emo with his gothic red eyes, and he looked exactly like Mikey Way. I almost got an orgasm. 1. Suddenly, Marilyn Mason stopped singing. I would like to present X Black X Tear X 1-1. He said. I ran on stage. Lucian, Samaro, Snap, and Hades were there. They started to play their installments. I got on stag.
Well, if you wanted honesty, that's all you had to say. 1111.
I sang. Parenthetical. I didn't own the lyrics to date song. My voice sounded like a pentagram between Amy Lee and a girl version of Gerard Way. Everyone clapped. Satan got an eructation.
I'm not okay. 1.
I sang finale. Sudin, Lucian started playing the song wrong by Mistake. OMFG 1, yielded James. What the fuck?
Whoops, I'm sorry.
Said Lucian. You fucking asshole! 1, James shooted angrily.
You guys are such prebs. 1-1.
Snap said.
Come on, it was a mistake. 1.
Yeah, it's not his fault. 1-1, said Sirius. No, he ruined the fucking song. 1, yelled Samaro.
You guys stop. 1-1.
I shouted angrily, but it was too late. They all began to fight. Suddenly, Samaro took out Hei's Nife,
OMFG, no! 1-1.
shouted Lucian, but it was too late. James tried to shoot off his arm. And then I jumped sexilt in front of Dabulat. 1-1.
No!
1-1.
1-1.
1, yielded everyone, but it was too late. Suddenly, everything went Blake. Holy hell, gentlemen. I'm
All
not
right.
okay.
I promise. Well, if you wanted honesty, that's all you had to say.
Indeed. Can I just kill everything old enough to die and some that aren't?
Yeah, I feel like maybe you should hold on to that rage, because I feel like this ending chapter is going to be the final...
It's not... Yeah, well, I mean, the ending for this week, yes.
Yes.
All right, so this brings us to the glorious and famed, or infamous, Chapter 39, entitled... Was this the actual title?
Yes.
Oh, how fantastic. I am a trolling Gene Ios lulz.
Script writer's note. This is a very odd chapter. The first half was written by a troll, and the second half is also posted as Chapter 40. I will do my best to make clear in this chapter and the next when this troll author is talking, but honestly I bet you can easily figure it out as the typos decrease substantially. Additionally, I will include the troll author's note for reference as dialogue.
There's also air quotes in the troll mention.
Yes.
Just because of my own theory, but
All right. As we have well established, Michael believes that this is Tara, who just got disgusted with the whole process and decided to change it up a bit.
Yes.
All right, so, Chapter 39. Disclaimer. I do not own the HP series, and I am not the real XXX Bloody Wrists 666XXX. I am an extremely immature, pathetic idiot girl. I know. Out of boredom, I cracked this girl's passy for fun. And it took less than 8 minutes to do it, too. And I will probably get in a shitload of trouble, which I probably deserve, because I'm being a troll right now. Meh. And I present to you my crappy part in this story. And take note, I haven't finished reading this fic yet, but instead skip over to skim Chapter 38. Flame, laugh, do whatever you want. Preps. I, the American retail-wearing British vampire Sue, coughed up blood. Satan kneeled down beside me.
No, don't die.
I gave him a rueful smile.
I'm sorry. It's something I had to do to fulfill my duty as the noble, gothic Mary Sue.
Satan sobbed.
I love you, Ebony.
I love you, the number 2. I'll see you in hell.
I mumbled, already finding my surroundings fading to black. Bloody Mary Smith suddenly popped into the room for no apparent reason. She frowned when she realized the room was oddly silent, but at the sight of Ebony's lifeless body, she screamed. Her face became pale with horror. She screamed for the healers, Dumbledore, McGoogle, and every single gothic person she could think of. Suddenly, a glow started to surround the body of Ebony. Everyone stared in shock. Her body started to lift, ever so slowly, and then, to everyone's shock, it started to incinerate. When everyone realized what was happening, they rushed over to try to rescue the body, but it was too late. The Sioux became nothing more than a pile of ashes. A loud resounding of everyone bellowing.
No!
Filled the room. A flash of white light from the ashes then started to bounce around the room. Everyone cowered in fear and were temporarily blinded. When it was all over, things changed. All the silly goth clothes dropped from everyone's bodies. I will refuse to explain how the hell that happened. And in their place, clothes the characters would normally wear in canon appeared on their bodies. When everyone got over the shock of becoming free of the gothic power, everybody cheered. Everyone started singing, "Ding dong, the Sioux is dead." Well, that is until all the HP characters realized the true implications of becoming more canon-like again. All the characters who were supposed to be dead fell to the floor, their bodies cold and lifeless. Harry and Voldemort started dueling. On the left side of the two, the battle of the light side and the dark side were reaching a climax. And, because the replacement author also likes to screw around with canon, Draco and Heroine fled the scene and got married. Meanwhile, down in hell, Ebony shed a single tear because of her current situation. A situation that would live on for all eternity, or at least until the end of fanfiction time. She lost it all, but she knew she had to remain strong. Nothing would ever break her down. She looked down over her pale body and frowned.
Where are my emo clothes?
She asked herself in confusion. And then it occurred to her. For her shirt, She was wearing a bright pink polo with a little seagull on the right or left, I can't remember, side. Below that, she was wearing a denim miniskirt with the destroyed look on it. Paired underneath that skirt were legging with a little moose at the bottom. And then Ebony realized on her shoulder she was carrying a pretty bag with an eagle on it that said, "Live your life," written all over the bag. Ebony suppressed the urge to scream. Here, she was decked out in clothes prepped to the extreme, wearing stuff from Abercrombie & Fitch, American Eagle, and Hollister. Panicked, Ebony hastily tried to take off the Hollister polo, but underneath it there was another Hollister polo underneath. Ebony frowned and looked under her shirt. All she saw was a bra underneath. Dare I point out, it's from the Airy line available at American Eagle. Ebony tried to remove the shirt again, but to her frustration, there was yet another polo to replace it.
This is illogical and does not make any sense!
Ebony bellowed out to the air. She failed to see the irony in her statement. How hypocritical her words were, seeing as she was practically calling the kettle black here. Ebony slit her wrists and mumbled to herself,
Oh me god.
"End crap thick." Oh yeah, if you want to see the original content this chick had planned for this chapter, I accessed it through the document manager thingy, which I copied and pasted, so you can read it here.
This is where the troll author adds the original content that Tara had planned to post, but this is the exact same content found in Chapter 40.
Sincerely, an anon author who will silently not reveal her identity because she's a coward. Tongue. AKA, just a troll with rocks for brains.
Not gonna lie. Favorite chapter so far.
Without question.
That was a definition of a slow burn, my friends. But that is what we in the industry like to call payoff.
Indeed. And can I tell you just how refreshing it was for me to finally feel like I was back doing my job and actually reading something cold that I didn't have to fucking stammer over for the entirety of the time I was reading it.
If there was a way that you could sign a petition or get people to petition to get you on Night Vale, that entire chapter got my rocks off because it was almost like getting to see my friend as a guest vocal on Night Vale. So,
oh, bless you.
Well done. And much like any time you hit the eye of the storm, I can only imagine that once we return next week, all the good feelings will be gone, and it will be right back into the nonsensical, mind-destroying fray that is Tara Gillespie's inner workings.
Yes, in fucking deedly-do. Now, I assume we are ending here, yes?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify. But,
Yes.
we, gentlemen, I want to take a moment in our, near anniversary here to, again, self-congratulate. We have actually managed to tailor this show down to a point where we are functioning around a 2-hour runtime every single time we come out of the box. And I don't know whether or not that is just particularly a credit to, Michael and myself attempting to format how we present our topics a little bit, better and be a little more on the side of brevity as we've talked about, or what. But congrats to you both, because we've now managed to do this for several weeks running, where we hove in around like a 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar going into today, and once we mentioned that we're nearly done with My Immortal, I have a theory that after we're done with My Immortal, I feel like for a spell, our episodes are probably going to be significantly shorter because we have it dialed in. What started as a joke of can we kill Michael with editing has then turned into we know what too short and we are always too long, but at least we know like what's too long for our own selves. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been nice to kind of figure out that, to pare down. All right, my research needs to stay within around a 3 to 5 page run here so that I can kind of keep this bite-sized. Speaking of which, John, can we expect any further episodes from you going forward, or have we, officially reached your capacity again?
You haven't exhausted it at all. If anything, it was a lot of fun to do a topic in the future. So maybe when the season ends, let's call the year a season. Maybe season 2 we'll see more topics.
Maybe Deer Hunter Part 2.
Let's not get too far ahead of yourself, Chief.
Or will that be season 4 or 5 or 10?
I don't even have any ideas in the chamber right now. I've just been looking at a lot of weird random things. Like, do you guys remember the Animorphs series?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Something brought the Animorphs back into my line of sight. So maybe I've been debating not reading them, but maybe like going through like Wikipedia or like Reddit summaries, just because I loved those YA novels. Those were pre-YA novels.
You just triggered me, because my section, when I was a page in the first library that I ever worked in, and a page is the person who reshelves the books and maintains sections, was the children and YA section. And I had to reshelve so many of those Animorph books, and they were constantly just being pulled off because some kid's like, "Ooh, ego!" and runs off with it, and they would just disappear, and I'd have to go get them and bring them back. So I started the PTSD here real strong.
I think maybe if I'm just hip fire, I would maybe do like a plot summary for a YA novel as an episode.
I like that,
because they will be. It would just be a Wikipedia article. It would be like the minimum effort. Either Animorphs and it's just coming to my head now because like the nostalgia machine, Christopher Pike's The Last Vampire series.
All right.
Which Christopher Pike was, I think, stepping stone into actual horror novel writing for me. Even though it was framed as a YA, it was really, like, to my adolescent brain, very sexual, very bloody, and very, like, I think Becky talked about it recently with me, where her parents, like mine, were really restrictive on what we could watch as kids, but the caveat, and it applies to her, not to me, is that they would let her read anything that she wanted. Like, can't watch anything that you want, but somehow they thought that books wouldn't be worse.
Yeah, reading is less subversive than somehow watching it manifest.
But that is absolutely not the case, because usually your imagination is going to do far worse things, especially with the amount of material out there. But that was what Last Vampire was for me.
Nice.
But anyway, maybe let's call it season 2. And we'll work on it.
All right. I was mentioning it because I didn't know if Michael's brain has returned back to his body yet. So I can do something. All right. I just want to make sure.
I have at least
he's moved.
A couple.
He's getting acclimated to the new surroundings. So
yes, but I have at least 2 separate topics that I can do. I think I'm leaning towards one.
Allow me to finally manifest something that I've been holding on to for a long time, so that John, the Tony Stark of this crew, and me, the Captain America of this crew. John, you're not the one to throw yourself down on top of the grenade. You're not going to lay down on the wire so that your buddy can crawl across it. You're just going to let Michael flounder in the breeze while his brains are scrambled egg and have to come up with a topic for next week to present. It's really well done, John. I admire you for that. Thank you.
He shouldn't have killed my parents. to go with your analogy.
He's got you there, Shane.
Or metaphor, rather.
He's got you there.
Well, I did kill his mom repeatedly, night after night, for a good long while, so I understand.
She needs a break.
I'm trying to break it. That's why I keep hitting it so hard. And now, with that hip-crippling dismount, I think that has wrapped this episode up like a condom on a cock. And we thank you all for being here, as per usual. If you want to check us out on social networks, please do so. We could really use the support, I assure you. Go find us, like and subscribe where you can, and if you dig what we do, rate and review. We sincerely appreciate it. And coming up every Friday, we have Disinformed After Dark, our new YouTube series that we are running, our video podcast component of this, which you can encounter. And we're going to have some fun stuff coming up for you this Friday. And it's 10 a.m. release time, great Arizona State time for those that want to do mountain time, like John's mom.
Oh, yeah.
All right, kids, for the glorious and now nearly 1 year old Disinformed podcast, I'm Shane.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
Thank you for coming, kids. Don't worry, it will be saved by the Robotham.